And then for the next week, or however long the academic reading circles are being held, the group members change role and a new text is given. Every time there's a new reading circle, the roles rotate, so that eventually every member will have done every role. Excuse me for a moment. So I mentioned roles. There are 5. We'll talk about these in more detail a little bit later, but the roles are leader, researcher, linguist, connector, and visualizer. Don't worry too much about these, we'll talk about them in a moment. So before we talk about the roles, we're going to talk about how to choose an appropriate text. So the text to use depends a lot on the context. It depends why you're teaching, it depends who your students are, it depends why they are learning. It's very important to base the text on the context. In my context, teaching academic preparation at ILF, both in Surabaya and Jakarta, I used to teach scholarship students going to study in Australia to do their master's or doctoral degree. So the text had to be at a sufficient level to prepare them for postgraduate study in Australia. They also needed to pass their IELTS test, so the texts needed to be general enough to give them useful skills to help them pass the IELTS test. But as I said, it depends on your context. If you're teaching in high schools, or if you're teaching primary level, or if you're teaching PhD students, then the text and the complexity of the text will obviously change. I used mainly academic texts because I was teaching students to study overseas. I used textbook chapters, journal articles, and other primary sources. You can also use second semi-academic texts such as online magazines, newspapers, and professional blogs. Online magazines like New Scientist are very good, Time, Wired for technology. There's a whole world of information. The sample text today is from an online magazine called ION that has a lot of useful, interesting articles on it. Newspapers are good, very topical. A lot of them have longer, in-depth details, longer, in-depth articles, I should say, that you can use. I get a lot from The Guardian, and also London Review of Books, New York Times, Washington Post sometimes, and also Australian papers, because my students were going to study in Australia. I've also used the Jakarta Post in the past for more local articles, and Tempo, which is a good Indonesian online magazine. And professional blogs are also very good because you have a lot of very knowledgeable academics writing more informally on blogs. These can be good to follow, and they're good for kind of up-to-date, context-specific information that you can give to your students. So the text should be the correct length. I go for 1,000 to 4,000 words. Again, it depends on your context. For overseas study, they need to build up the reading articles of about 4,000 words because that's how long academic journals tend to be. When you're first starting with these academic reading circles, you can try something shorter from 1,000 and gradually build up. If you're teaching lower level students or younger students, then you would choose shorter texts. But this is what I've used in the past. It shouldn't be too difficult in terms of language. If they have to look up every word in the dictionary, it's going to be too difficult. So you do need to get the level right. It needs to be challenging, but not too challenging. It shouldn't be too easy in terms of context. If you think back to the goals, one of the things is to kind of look at the different contexts of texts and how they fit into different kind of cultures and situations. If you choose something that is very similar to the student's own background, then this won't prepare them as well. And as I said, it depends on the context. It should be relevant to the student's current or future study, something of interest to them. And it should feature details that can be presented visually. If you recall, one of the roles is the visualizer, and I'll speak in more detail about this a little bit later. So you have a sample text. There is a simple way to improve the world's food systems. So this is a text I've used in the past with an academic reading circle. So I chose this because my students were from Bappenas, which is the planning agency, I believe, in Indonesia. They were very concerned with food security and other planning issues, so this text was relevant to their background and to their future study. I chose it this time to demonstrate at this lecture because it's relatively short compared to some of the other texts I've used, and it illustrates the roles quite well, as we'll see a little bit later. This is the original. I mentioned it, Eon magazine earlier, and this is where I took this text from. When I give text to the students, I would always format them, as you can see in front of you, with all the images and other formatting from the internet taken out, and line numbers put in. This makes it a lot easier for the students to focus on the text without being distracted by anything else. So we're going to move on and talk about the roles in a moment. As I talk about the roles, I will be referring to the sample text to give you some kind of examples of how the roles work and what sort of things that they do. First role is the leader. Does anybody know who this is?
Mahatma Gandhi.
Okay, Gandhi, that was an easy one, yeah? The other ones are more difficult. Yeah, this is Gandhi. We're not talking about Gandhi, but he was the first leader that popped up when I was looking on the internet. So the role of the leader is, so each role produces a handout. This is the information that the leader should produce on their handout. They should provide a summary of the key points of the text. They act as moderator during the discussion, and they manage contribution. So they help guide the discussion, they make sure that it stays on track, on topic, and they make sure all the other participants contribute fully, or as much as they can. They try to make sure that all the participants in the discussion understand the text. And they do this by they write comprehension questions, which will be answered during the group discussion. They also lead a final discussion. And to kind of get this discussion going, they will write some discussion questions that will be discussed with the group. So they need to summarize and they write the key points. To make this easier, they can divide the text into sections if necessary. If it's a long text, it will need to be divided. If not, it won't. If the text is an academic journal article, it can be divided into the normal sections of introduction, literature review, discussion, or methods, discussion, conclusion. If it's not, then it's down to the leader to look for logical distinctions in the text. And then, as mentioned, they should provide the key points for each section. Doesn't need to be a lot of detail, just enough to kind of summarize the text. They should write comprehension questions that they will ask the participants in the discussion to make sure that they have understood the text before the discussion can begin. So they need to write 3, or at least 3, I would say, comprehension questions. And importantly, it should check the key concepts of the texts, not the details. Detailed questions are often very easy to answer. You can answer a detailed question without necessarily understanding the concepts of the text. So the leader needs to ensure that text is not checking for details, but kind of concepts, ideas. And the leader should also write 3 discussion questions for after the discussion or after each role has described their information, to have a discussion about the wider aspects of the text. And these are for use after each role has presented their work. And there's a quick checklist to make sure that they're good quality questions. So this is where the teacher can help out. Are the questions grammatically correct? Will the other participants be able to understand the questions? Do the comprehension questions relate to significant text concepts? The leader's trying to make sure everyone understands, so it shouldn't be focused too much on the details here. Can the leader answer the questions? It's no good writing questions for everyone else if the leader can't actually answer them themselves. And will the 3 questions, are they interesting? Are they complicated enough to make sure there is an interesting discussion? So they should be sufficiently detailed or controversial, maybe, so that people will have different opinions that they can discuss. I'd like to digress slightly now. This is Bloom's taxonomy. I'm not sure if anyone is familiar with this, but this is a way of kind of grouping knowledge and information. You see at the bottom, it starts with knowledge. This is the kind of level you'd be studying at primary school, maybe. And then it goes through comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. Synthesis and evaluation is where you would be studying at kind of undergraduate or postgraduate level in university. I would say, so I show this to my students, to the leader, to help them prepare their questions. The comprehension question should be around the middle sort of level, around the comprehension, application, analysis. The discussion question should be higher. They're more likely to be around the synthesis or evaluation level, sorry. So we talk about some, and it gives you some keywords. For example, evaluation, it talks about solving, judging, rating, recommending. So if the leader features these sort of keywords in their discussion questions, it's likely to be sufficiently challenging at the right level for an interesting discussion. So this is based, can I refer you to the sample text, please, that you have?
Okay, this one is the sample text. You can get it from the...
So yeah, you should have this text. It's called, what's it called? I can't remember. Something about food scarcity.
Okay, yep.
Thank you. So I'm going to kind of go through this, the leader. Hello? Oh, okay. So one of the things the leader has to do is divide the text into sections. For this text, I don't think it's needed. It's quite a short text, so it can remain as one section. So these are the key points. How can a growing population be fed? That's mentioned early in the text. And then it goes on to talk about various options for how the population can be fed, which are changing people's diets, using technology, and increasing agricultural output. And then the final overriding key point of the text is reducing food waste is the best option. So these are the key points made by the author of the text. The leader should prepare a handout, read the text, and then prepare a handout that they would use in the discussion. Okay, discussion questions, your turn. So you have the sample text. I would like you, either individually or with the person sitting next to you, write a discussion question. And if you go to, on your phone, go to www.menti.com, type in the code. You will then be able to type in your discussion question, and it should, hopefully, if the technology works, appear on screen. Bear with me. So they should be switching to Menti in a moment. Okay, bear with me. So this is Menti. Sorry, bear with me. Oh, the code's gone. Did you get the code?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. I need to, so.
Okay, the code is 253100.
Okay, so I need to enter my code. No, other tab. Type in the code. 253100. Yep. Okay, so has anyone logged in? It should give you a question.
Yeah, we
Okay.
have successfully logged in, and we will have several questions, right?
Okay, so if you type in a question, when we're logged in, we should see the questions appearing on screen. Type in the code. Okay, we're getting there. So you should see something like this?
Yeah.
Okay, with a partner, think of a discussion question for this text and type in, oh, it's the wrong, sorry. Okay, I think we're, okay, so now you should be able to type in a discussion question. So I'll give you a few minutes. You can either work with a partner or work individually. Type in your discussion question, and then we should see them start to appear on screen.
So everyone has logged in? Oh, okay, yeah, good.
Okay, so we're on the, no? Okay, so now we're on the correct page. We should see the questions appearing when you have submitted them. Here we go. Okay, so if I can address, so the first question, how do the students understand the text, English text easy? That's more of a general question related to academic reading circles, so I will take care of that question in the question and answer session later. Okay. So how to reduce wasted food? Yeah, that's a good question. That will have a lot of different answers. I think that will have a lot of different opinions. So that would work quite well as a discussion question. What is a neutrino? A neutrino is a subatomic particle, but not really relevant to this text, I don't think. And then there are lots of... Yeah, the question in green is very good, very analytical, and again that will lead to some quite interesting discussion amongst the participants of the academic reading circle. Yeah, why is ensuring zero hunger difficult? Again, a very nice open-ended question that should get a lot of interesting input from the participants. Healthy food, yeah, that's also useful. It doesn't particularly address the issue of food waste, though. And then food systems that's a pretty good question. Any more to come? Okay, we've got movement. How to change human diet to reduce... Okay, yeah, interesting question there. And how people can make sure that it's... Oh, it's gone, wait. How can people make sure that they dispose properly? Yeah, give more problem. And how to change human diets to reduce environmental effects? Yeah, I mean, these are all very interesting discussion questions based on the text, and I think these would all lead to a very nice discussion based on the text, because they're referring to text concepts, but they're building on them, so the students are relating what they've learned in the text to their knowledge and to kind of wider issues of society. Okay, so I'm going to move on. I'm going to show you the discussion questions that I came up with. Okay, so we go... Oh. Okay, bear with me. Okay, so here we are. So these are the kind of questions that I came up with during this exercise. So the detailed question I came up with is, what is the world's population predicted to be in 2050? This, I don't think... Oh, really? Okay, so I'm running a little behind schedule here. Okay, so I've actually forgotten the answers to these, but anyway, that's a detailed question, because it's easy to search for 2050 and find the number. A better question would be, which factors lead to 50% loss of food. That requires more understanding of the text. And then my discussion question was, how easy do you think it will be to reduce food waste in Indonesia? And what strategies could the government use to reduce food waste? Next role is the linguist. Anyone know who this is?
Someone,
Very famous linguist.
someone who
No.
master in language.
Chomsky, yes, Noam Chomsky. Very good. Okay, so linguist. New texts, they feature a lot of unknown vocabulary that will be not understood. The job of the linguist is to identify this unknown vocabulary and then define it so that the other roles can focus on their roles and not worry about new words. Only the linguist focuses on new words. So, things the linguist can title is unknown vocabulary, tonal language. This is language that's where the writer shows their opinion about something. Topical vocabulary, vocabulary lists related to the topic. Academic vocabulary, specific words that are on the academic word list maybe. Collocations and phrases, so these are words that are kind of longer than one word, kind of idiomatic languages or multi-word phrases. And discourse, the kind of linking words that link the text together. I was going to do another Mentimeter where you type in your unknown vocabulary, but we don't really have time, I'm afraid. We can come back to this at the end if there is time. So this is some of the unknown vocabulary I found based on the text. Nostrum, low-hanging fruit, subsumed, dissemination, all the line numbers there are given for you. Tonal language, as I said, this is where the author shows their opinion, things like, it's quite depressing to learn, fortunately, made impressive strides. Topical language about food, it's about food security, more topical language about change. So these are words kind of grouped based on their general subject. Then we have some academic vocabulary from the academic word lists. It gives you the line number there and a sub-list of the academic word list. And then there's a few collocations and phrases and some kind of linking words as well. So it's the linguist's job to find these words and define them for the other members of the group. Lexical, so if students don't know which to choose, they can go to Lex Tutor, which looks like this. Slightly scary looking page, but all you need to do is you just copy and paste your text into this box. And then you go to Submit window, the yellow button. And it does this. So it shows you that. So this is based on the sample text again. 75% of the words are very common. 7% of the words are less common. 8% of the words are on the academic word list. And then there's quite a few uncommon words. So that's the text on the left. On the right, it shows the words color coordinated for how common or uncommon they are. For example, blue is common. Yellow are words on the academic word list, I believe. And, we don't really have time to look at that in any detail, I'm afraid. Okay, more difficult again. Who is this researcher? Nothing to do with linguistics or English language. She won 2 Nobel Prizes. 2 Nobel Prizes. No, this is Marie Curie, discovered radiation. So the researcher, quick question. What is metabolomics? Okay, silence, I don't know either. But the point of this question is it's the researcher's job to research new ideas and concepts in the text. The linguist focuses on words, researcher focuses on everything else. For your information, it's the scientific study of chemical processes involving small molecules. Okay, doesn't matter. So the researcher, so authors assume a shared cultural background with their readers. They assume their readers know certain things. As students of English, as people that come from another country, you will have different background, you have a different cultural background, so you will not necessarily understand all the references in the text. So authors will often talk about people, places, events, and concepts without explaining them, because they will assume the reader will know these things. And it's the researcher's job to investigate these references to help all their friends understand the meaning of the text. So the researcher should identify references in the text. They can be people, places, events, or concepts. Highlight which ones are likely to be unknown by the group. Research information, and importantly, they should only choose references that impact on the meaning of the text. How much research they do depends on your context. As I said, my students were going to study overseas, so I made sure that they researched properly from a number of different sources and then synthesized the material. They were not allowed to copy and paste from Wikipedia, for example. Okay, no time for the Menti, I'm afraid. So these are the references I found. They mention the international community, the United Nations, Sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia, no events, and then there's a few concepts. So these are the things the researcher might or could research, but what they should research are the ones that are relevant to the understanding of the text, and the ones that they think people won't know. So for example, I got rid of international community because it's too general. Sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia, you don't really need to understand the text. And the same for climate change, metabolomics, and GMO. They don't have an important meaning for the text. However, food security and low and non-carbon energy systems do. So the researcher should research these points. Which I then did. I copy them, even though I said don't copy and paste from Wikipedia, this is exactly what I did for these particular examples. The information's there, but we don't really need to look at that. It's not important to what I'm talking about. Okay, so the next one is a connector. Anyone want to guess what this is? It's a connector, yes. It's a wire connector. I couldn't find a picture of a person who was a connector. So the researcher researches objective facts about the text, people, places, etc. The connector is much more personal. So when people read, they make connections between the text and events in their lives. Students often struggle to do this because they lack confidence with the language. The connector helps the group to make these connections. The connector connects the text to their own lives, to their personal background. So they're looking about how the information in the text connects to other studies or courses they've taken part in, familiar events that everyone has experienced, and their own personal experience. It's easier to kind of illustrate this with an example. So the connector should describe these and how they relate to the text. So for me, this is how I could connect the text to my own life. So I studied mechanical engineering as my bachelor's, and so I would be able to describe the warehouses in line 77 and some of the other more technical kind of engineering style solutions that they propose. That is something that is relevant to me personally. Familiar events. I grew up with the Ethiopian famine in 1984. That was a big news story at the time, which is mentioned in kind of lines 6 to 8. So I could describe how the Ethiopian famine affected me and how that has affected my understanding and my relationship to this text. And personal experience, it mentions reducing meat consumption in line 29. I have recently started to reduce my meat consumption, so I could talk about why I did that, the effects it has had, and again, relate my experiences to the text. The point of the connector is that it's very personal to the individual. It's how the text relates to them. The researcher is a lot more objective. It's more famous facts rather than personal facts. Okay, last one is the visualizer. Anyone know what this is? It's not a lamp. It is a classroom visualizer. You put a text underneath and it puts it on the projector. So multimodal texts can help students to understand better. If there's graphics and videos and so on along with the text, it helps comprehension. Information from a text can always be illustrated visually. So the visualizer's job is to find information on the internet or create their own graphics that illustrates concepts from the texts visually in graphic form to help understanding. So good visuals are photos that demonstrate key ideas of the text, videos that show the reality of the situation, satirical cartoons that I will give an example of in a moment, timelines maybe, if there's a chronological order in the text, a timeline can help to show it visually, and charts and graphs that show statistics visually. Bad visuals. Too many photos, no explanation about how the visuals relate to the text, and forgetting the source. If you're getting something off the internet, you should always cite it correctly. So here are some examples from the text. It mentions undernourishment, lines 6 to 9, and I found this graph that shows, so each blob is a part of the world, I think, and it shows undernourishment in different continents of the world. Again, this one shows United Nations goals for world hunger. Green is good, yellow is not so good, red is there's still an issue. So these visuals are demonstrating undernourishment, one of the concepts in the texts around the world. This is a video, a TED talk by Hans Rosling, who talks very well about population, and he illustrates statistics very well, very visually. We don't really have time to watch this, unfortunately. World agricultural production is mentioned lines 37 to 38. And there is this graph, this one features Indonesia. As you can see, Indonesia was quite low in the 60s, but has since done very well and is now above the world average for agricultural production. Again, this is a graph that's demonstrating concepts from the text in a visual way. It also mentions imperfect fruit and vegetables, lines 46 and 47. And I found a little carrot that looks like a spaceman. There's a slightly sexy looking horseradish. There's a funny looking aubergine and a tomato that looks like a duck. Not very academic, but you know, it's always nice to have a little bit of light relief. A third of all food is wasted, can be demonstrated by this visual. It looks a lot more impressive as a graphic than it does as a simple statistic in a text. So that's the job of the visualizer, to make people kind of feel some of the things from the text rather than just reading them. And this is an example of satire. Satire is a kind of joke that makes fun of the kind of rich and the powerful. So the joke here is that the family waste a lot of their food. Okay, so that was the 5 roles. Okay, so the discussion, I will quickly tell you how it works. So they get the 5 students to join the group, they bring their handouts, the leader asks the comprehension questions, the roles then share their information. This should be a discussion, not turn taking. So they shouldn't each take it in turns, they should discuss things. So the researcher might start off by explaining one of the concepts. There might be an unknown word, so the linguist would explain the word, and then it passes back to the researcher. The researcher might continue talking, and then the connector has something to say because it relates to them personally. So rather than just being very fixed, it should be an organic discussion where everyone contributes appropriately. Then the leader initiates the final discussion with the discussion questions, and there could be times for a larger class discussion led by the teacher. So the teacher is more of a facilitator in this. They give feedback on the handouts, they help set things up, but they should not intervene. The idea is the teacher, the students figure things out for themselves, as they will have to. So they negotiate the meaning, they become more independent learners. The teacher can be on hand for questions, but not as a kind of guiding influence. They should just be in the background.
Probably we can have more answer question. What do you think?
Oh yeah, so various possible extensions. Again, possible extensions, they could give advice, they could write up a summary. The teacher could do some language work based on something that happened in the activity. Okay, conclusion, groups of 4 or 5, suitable text. They prepare handouts based on their roles, then they have a discussion using the handouts. ARCs are very good at developing reading skills, developing enjoyment of reading for the students, increasing student subject knowledge, and also improving spoken fluency and group work. So that's the end of my presentation. Sorry it was a little bit rushed at the end.
Okay. Wow, that's great. Okay, give a round of applause for Mr. Alex. Okay. Well, wow, it's very insightful presentation, Mr. Alex. Okay, absolutely. Probably the teachers here, they will have several questions. That's why I keep around 15 minutes for them to have question answer. Okay. For this round, I will open 3 questions related to what Alex have explained before. Okay. Is there anyone having question? Just right. Okay. Miss 1. Okay. And 2. Okay, 2 people first, okay.
Me? Hello. Okay, thank you very much. I'm a teacher at junior high school. According to your opinion, which target you want to take most, reading ability or speaking ability from what you presented? Thank you very much.
I suppose both are equally useful. Ultimately, it depends why they're learning English. Speaking is always useful. Reading is, it depends on why they need to read. If they want to study in English, or if they want to kind of read things on the internet in English, they'll need to learn to read. Speaking, I suppose, is, unless they need it academically, speaking is more useful. But one of the good things about the academic reading circle is it allows both. The students develop reading skills because they have to read the text in detail, but then they also develop their speaking skills because they have to discuss the text during the group discussion. So it's one of the rare activities that kind of benefits both speaking and reading.
Okay, well, that's good. Okay, probably the next questioner. Okay.
Thank you very much for
Hello.
the time. Yes. My name is Ayu. I'm also a teacher. From your explanation, I can see that it is more suitable for the higher level of learners, for instance, for high school students or university students. But for me, as a teacher of younger learners, what should we prepare first before we come up to the writing practice? I mean, as practicing writing is not something easy for my students. Thank you.
I think they need to have something to write about, some reason to write. If it's just kind of random writing, then it's very difficult for the students to get motivated. So there needs to be an authentic reason to write. So how old are your students?
12.
12, okay. So I suppose 12-year-olds would write probably something online. You could get them to write blog posts. As a starting thing, you could get them to comment on so a lot of blog posts or a lot of kind of articles on newspapers have comment section. You could get them to comment on that, then they're communicating. It's authentic communication. You could get them to find a kind of article or blog that they're interested in, one of their hobbies maybe, and then engage in one of the kind of slightly written discussion on that. And even though that'll only be kind of short sentences and paragraphs, it's a good start to get them thinking about writing, and then you can maybe use that for kind of longer, more formal text that would normally be required in school. But to get them interested in writing, try to think of what they would write in real life. What might they write in Indonesian, and then find a similar context so they can do the same thing in English.
Wow, thank you for very brilliant question and answer. As we have promised before, so the questionnaire, those who give question will get some prizes from ILF, right? Okay, but we still have more. We still have more souvenirs. So probably you, is there anyone having more question? We still open. Okay, yep. We still open 2 more question. Okay, one more. Come on. Okay. Wow. Okay. Yep. We still have 2 more. Yeah. Later. After this, we will have. Okay. We will have it after this.
Thank you. My name is Laila. I am from.
Nice to meet you.
Yes, nice to meet you too. I think that the method of English teaching is very suitable for high students. I am the teacher of elementary school. Actually, I have big problem because I live in the village of Ngawi, East Java. Can you help me, sir? Do you have a video to show up the implementation of this method? In order, I think that's all of the teacher here, maybe not all, almost, how to say, active speaking maybe. But if you give us the video to show up the method, I think that is very stable for us to understand all of your method. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll have a look. I'll have a look on the computer in a moment. I did find a video when I was preparing, and it's of. It's not elementary school, but it's high school students. But it does demonstrate the concept. So I'll have a look in a moment.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Mulatul Islamia, and I'm actually very excited to attend this session because me myself working with university students on reading, but my student is less skilled student. I try not to sound like underestimating them, but this is the fact. And when I listen to your explanation about reading circle, I kind of familiar with that because I experienced myself back on my master's study. I have impulsive thought that I'm going to implement this with my students. But the thing is, like I said, my students less skilled. When I say less skilled students, it is less in every aspect of skill. For example, like in the reading, in the speaking, in vocabulary, writing, and so on. And I think this kind of method will be suitable for high skilled students. So can you give me a solution or a strategy to be able to implement this with my student? Because it is, I think, very insightful.
It just depends on the type of text you teach. I mentioned academic articles, but that's because that was my context. If your students are lower level, then you need to find shorter, simpler articles that you can use with them. So find out what they're interested in, find out what they need to learn, and then you can start looking for kind of shorter articles. Even if you look in like a textbook, I don't know what level your students are, but there's lots of textbooks at different levels that feature lots of texts. You could take a text out of the appropriate leveled textbook. If you look on, there's a website called One Stop English, and they have a lot of news articles at different levels. They've got like advanced, intermediate, pre-intermediate, and I think they have elementary. So these are, sensible length text, but they're at different levels, so you can choose the level, and they're also topical issues, so you should find something interesting for your class, and then you can select the one that is the right level. And also because of the roles, they don't need to worry about understanding everything, they just need to be able to understand enough to be able to do their role. And then as they do the discussion, that's when all the roles kind of work together, and then they get the overall understanding of the text. So when they first read it, they only need to understand enough to be able to do their specific role.
Actually, I'm working with, I teach reading for kind of academics reading. It is specific reading for specific program. It is Islamic studies, which is the source is, I think, limited. When I go online, and I get very limited, a limited article. What is available are very dense article, which is research-based article, and it's very difficult for them. It's like my dilemma.
Yeah, that's if you're in a kind of slightly more narrow field, it will be more difficult. You could give them shorter sections, so I don't know how long these articles you're looking at, but let's say they're 2,000 words. You could just give them the first 500 words to work on one week, then the next 500 words the next week. So although it'll still be difficult for them, because it's a lot shorter, it won't feel overwhelming. And then by the end of, let's say, four kind of discussions, they'll have finished a full-length article, which should be quite rewarding for them, I would hope.
Are you suggesting that we have to stick on one article for a couple of periods?
No, it depends on your context. When I start with a new group, I would give them shorter, simpler articles, about 1,000 words, and then after a few months, they can handle longer, full-length journal articles. So, yeah, you can start your students off on something easier or something shorter, and then as they get more confident, as they improve their skills, you can give them longer and longer articles.
Okay, I believe that it's a good discussion and interesting discussion, I think, but the time is up. Thank you for Alex for coming and giving a very insightful presentation, and we have a souvenir for you. But yeah, we will give the souvenir to Alex first. Yep, to Alex first, and to Fitri. I invite Fitri to give you the souvenir. Okay. Yeah, and yeah, people who are so critical in asking this one, I think they are really excited to learn about how to be a good teacher later. Oke, Bu, Pak, monggo Pak. Iya, Ibu, tadi ada Ibu siapa ya? Maaf, saya lupa namanya ya. Laila, iya kok, silakan. Ya. Ya, oke, ya. Okay, yeah, probably we can stay together later. So I have okay. Bapak silakan. Congratulations. Okay, Pak, stay dulu. Mungkin nanti kita bisa foto. Ya, Ibu silakan. Ya, congratulations. And the last one. Yep. Yay. Wow, that's great. You get a big one. Okay. Wow. Well, probably we can have a picture together with them because they are great teacher, I think, and I believe they have a good students too in the school. Just bring it. Okay.
Ready? 1, 2, 3. One again. 1, 2.
Oke, terima kasih Bapak Ibu. Silakan kembali ke tempat masing-masing. Terima kasih, terima kasih. Thank you so much. Oke,